Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is an incredibly special day. I feel so honored. Today we get to welcome Nathan to share his incredible wisdom with us today, his incredible earth wisdom with us today. And I just want to share a little bit about Nathan. Nathan is a free mind, rapid change therapist, as well as a qualified leadership coach and a number of FTSE 250 organizations. With 24 years in leadership positions, 12 years in leadership development. There's a beautiful quote that I got off of Nathan's website, and he says on there, "In life, there are two kinds of challenge. The ones that hold us back, and the ones we deliberately embrace for what they truly are and what they truly make us." So powerful. Nathan's also an experienced integration coach working alongside with several plant medicines and ethogens. Nathan has just written a new book called Spirit Medicine Volume 1, and I'm excited because I think you're going to tell us that there's a few more volumes coming.
Just a few.
This book is alongside, you already have another book called Stop Working, Start Living. With or without psychedelics, his medicine really is about helping people reconcile their past, overcome childhood trauma, and come back to loving themselves in the way they wished they had always been. His work is about showing and teaching others the inner workings of the deep subconscious and how it's programmed to keep us safe. Many times actually meaning it's keeping us blocked or held back. And his focus is on guiding us through this programming in order to create a deeper connection to our body, mind, and spirit connections. Nathan is an incredible rainbow soul incarnate. I've had the absolute honor and pleasure to get to do your starseed reading. He is an incredibly brilliant rainbow starseed soul that has come to really help others remap their inner geometry, helping them to transcend and ascend. And from life lessons that we have all been experiencing, he helps us to learn how to reweave our tapestry within this life into the patterns and the geometries that we choose to create and be free with in this life. His starseed origins are connected to Andromeda and Sirius, providing a beautiful backdrop for his deeper studies and deeper drives into understanding the mechanics of the psyche and finding beautiful ways to support its healing. One of the key things I saw with you, Nathan, so much was that you are just, for lifetime after lifetime, soul incarnation after soul incarnation, been dedicating yourself to going into the liminal spaces, some of those shadow places, some of those places most of us are uncomfortable to go in order to help us map the way back home. So with so much love, I am so honored and excited to introduce you to everybody today as the guest speaker, as a profound guide and teacher. We are so blessed to be able to hear more of this wisdom. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you, everybody. Crikey, there's so much to share, and yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And the bit that always makes me laugh, actually, when you're saying that, like, the more that I got into astrology, is like, these dark, uncomfortable spaces that actually I'm quite comfortable to be in. Like, it really is comfortable, because quite a lot of my life has been just kind of this. It's not even a slow drip, but just kind of a steady drip of problems and trauma and being held in certain cycles and kind of exploring that and being really comfortable in those cycles, and then suddenly having epiphanies and realizations and clarity. It's like, actually, that's not kind of what I'm here to do. But at the same time, it was a learning experience, which then enables me to share a different story with somebody else. And I've done this for a lot of my life. And then I got to my Saturn return when I was 29. So I'd lived this life of all these different traumas and different experiences of being diagnosed with autoimmune disorders. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's at 8 years old. I had huge amounts of surgery at 8 years old. Then I went to secondary school, to high school, and was bullied severely. And then I became a bully. So I turned that pain onto other people to perpetuate the cycle in a different way. I then turned to drugs. and I was kind of on this spiral of taking a lot of recreational drugs. Don't get me wrong, I was still having some good things happening. I was, exploring the world and doing these different things, but there was these spirals that were happening, these tightening circles, toxic relationships, toxic friends, damaging behaviors to myself, to other people. Went traveling, kind of had a few epiphanies when I went traveling, came back. And then at 22, overdosed on recreational drugs. I took 16 ecstasy tablets in one go, over 5 grams of cocaine in one sitting. And my whole life kind of really got turned inside out. So I've had all these experiences of autoimmune disorder, bullying, pain, frustration, overdosing on recreational drugs. I've had this constant flow of things going on, and traveling the world and exploring things. And at 29, my Saturn return landed, and it was one day. It was less than a day, because I'd already done this long-term dark night of the soul, being drip fed over 29 years of learning these experiences and seeing these things and getting a different perspective on it, but not quite learning the lessons at every step. Like I would learn something, and then what would happen is I would then have this experience of actually almost like this. I'd learn it at an intellectual level, but then I wouldn't embody it at an identity level. So I'd learn psychotherapy models like the drama triangle. I learned the drama triangle when I was 19. I mean, I don't know many 19-year-olds that are learning transactional analysis, and really diving into this. But did it stop me from doing what I did at 22, 23 years old? No. But did it give me a lens in with which to actually look at the relationships around me? So as I came out the other side of that, I could then, hold on a minute, these relationships are damaging me. These relationships are holding me back and keeping me stuck. Yeah. So I was then able to see that and then kind of break those things down. And now the interesting thing, a part of my work now, is actually I teach the drama triangle, and I teach psychotherapy models. I teach it to leadership in FTSE 250 organizations. And I say, oh, it's leadership psychology. And I'm actually teaching them psychotherapy frameworks so that actually they're getting therapy to realize how much damage they've already done to their relationships at work and how to improve those relationships. So all of this stuff that has happened to me has become grist for the mill, quite literally, where I talk about this is what it looks like when you use these models, when you apply them, when you actually use these lenses and look at yourself and look at your relationships and how you can make the most of it. So yes, my life has been uncomfortable. And at the same time, it has become the story with which I use that to share with others in order to help them see the depth and in order to influence them to take action on this stuff much sooner, in a much clearer way than I ever did. So I love these uncomfortable spaces.
It's so profound and so powerful. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about you, your story, and the wisdom that you share, is that it's so raw, it's so real, and it has such a profound impact because it really gives us permission to be able to come out and be like, yeah, I have been in some of those dark places too. I have gone through things like that. I have also been the bully. I have also found ways to not deal with the pain or the trauma in a healthy way. So a lot of times you want to stay in the victim's point of view of like, well, blame because that's what happened to me. Whereas there's such a profound power in how you share your story, because it starts to create that awakening, that opening to get to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I've walked on the dark side too.
Yeah. And to say it's totally normal and it's okay.
Yeah.
Because most people are sitting in that space thinking that I'm wrong, I am disordered, I've got a disorder, that I am disordered, that I'm not okay, I'm too much, I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever. And actually everything that you're doing, every behavior that you have is absolutely normal based on how you were treated. And at no point is anything that you do ever going to make me push you away. No, it might be, okay, granted, as a therapist, there might be certain things where I have to might redirect you to another therapist. That's cool. There is nothing that you can do or say to me about your life that is going to scare me or is going to bother me, is going to push me away. because I've walked this path, because I understand how it feels like to be shunned, to be pushed out, to have done that to other people, to have had it done to myself. It's just like, this is old news in kind of floating speech marks. It's just like, cool, I've done this.
That also is such a profound thing, because I wanted to even tie in a bit of the starseed light worker, just that level of so many service to others, those that have incarnated in that. Honestly, your story is such a perfect example of, maybe as a kid, you didn't realize why you went through what you went through. As a teenager, you probably didn't realize why you were choosing what you were choosing. But just hearing you say at your Saturn return, your first Saturn return, mind you, that
Yep.
is so advanced, my dear. To be able to get the message at your first Saturn return, to be able to already accumulate all of that, and that is just really such a testimony to the devotion that you have been living lifetime after lifetime to help souls from the darkest places move through. And that many times light workers, star seeds, beings that incarnate in to assist, will incarnate into many of these trauma stories. In order to create that feeling, what I'm hearing you say is that, now people come to you, but there's nothing they can say that's going to make you uncomfortable. So it literally makes you the safest place for them to come back to themselves.
Exactly this. Now, for me, though, kind of like the spiritual journey for me is when I was younger, and I don't talk about this too much, but when I was younger, I saw entities, I saw characters, I saw like things, and I never knew what they were. I used to see silhouetted images of people moving around, and I was never sure if they were spirit guides or just spirits caught in those places, whatever. I just never knew that, but I never had anyone really to speak to about that. So as I got older, it became more uncomfortable. So I actually shut that energy down. And because I didn't understand how it kind of related to who I was, but I knew at the same time there was something that I was meant to be doing. There was a reason to be here. And that reason and kind of that sentiment has always helped me to move forward. So when I have put myself into a situation, I say when I put myself into a situation, unconsciously and unaware, kind of switched into that adaptive survival mechanism and did what I did. Actually, the breaking points when I got to that is like, hold on, is this what I'm actually here for? When I'm standing on the precipice of the edge and I've been taking ecstasy and cocaine solidly for 8 months, just going and going and going. And I get to that point and I break and I snap and I've gone over the edge and I'm like literally standing on the edge of the precipice. It's like, I've got 2 choices here. I also had a business offer on the table as well to buy quite a large quantity of cocaine and go into business. So I was heading down this road quite dramatically. And I had this, this moment of clarity. And it was, I can either carry on doing this and I'll either be dead or in prison. Is this what I was actually here for? Is this what I came here to do? And in that moment, it was like, no. And it was like, okay, I've stopped. All the drugs stopped. All the behavior stopped. All the relationships stopped. Done, 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 done. Thanks very much. Go. And people were like, did you ever do 12 steps? And I was like, no. It's just like, it was done. It was a clear message that was kind of given at that moment, because I have always known there was something that I was meant to be doing. I just didn't have the language and the articulation and the understanding that sat behind it or sits with it in order to make the conversations as clear as I'm having with people now. So yes, as you say, it's been clear that I dropped into this story to have these experiences, to feel this pain, to create this catalogue of tension, of disaster, of understanding, all of these things, in order for people to say, shit, Nathan fucking gets it.
There's a thought form that you present that I think is really profound. When I actually have heard you say this before, this really just kind of blew my mind. But a lot of the work that you do obviously is soul retrieval. Soul retrieval is also inner child work. And one of the things that I love is how you present it as if we are going back in time to find a child that was either lost, left behind. And I really resonate with that. That's something the guides have given me as a way to help people when we go back to find those inner child aspects of ourselves that have been left behind, it's not something we just want to be like, oh, well, let me just fix it. We really want to treat it with tenderness and kindness. This is an aspect of ourself that we would want to treat as if this was our own child, any child that we were rescuing and finding somewhere. And I want to come to that. But one of the things that you said that was so profound was that trauma is trauma, that there is no scale of 1 to 10 of like, oh, well, you know, you got pushed down and got made fun of in front of a bunch of people, so that's not that big a deal. That happens to everybody. Whereas if someone's gone through maybe more physical abuse or other types of abuse, that, oh, well, of course that would be worse. So, you know, they of course should have the right to feel that trauma. And I'd love for you to just describe that a little bit. How does that really sit within us? Because, you know, I too have had kind of that thought form of like, well, that's just how the house was. We just dealt with it.
Yeah, exactly this. But this is the first thing that we do. So when we experience trauma, and it's remembering that trauma isn't what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. Trauma is something that changes you psychologically or physiologically and causes you to shift a behavior in order to survive. It's a survival adaptation. So when we look at things like addiction and certain behaviors, codependency, people pleasing, perfectionism, all of these things, they're survival mechanisms. And we're doing it so that we don't feel like we did in that moment. But the thing that we do is when we have this trauma is we're doing our best to avoid it, to push it away, to not feel that sensation. And there's a couple of defense mechanisms we use. And one of the first ones is we make our trauma comparative, not relative. And what this means is that we will then measure our trauma against somebody else's. Well, you know, my life isn't as bad as those starving kids in Africa. So what the fuck have I got to complain about? By the way, I'm sweary. I forgot to tell and warn everyone about this. I'm hoping everyone's okay with this. Yeah. And we go, well, what the fuck's wrong with me? It's just like, well, what am I complaining about? My life isn't that bad. And then we don't deal with that thing. You know, I'm going to caveat, this is quite a strong one. It's not quite strong, it's a very strong kind of example. Now, I was bullied at school. Now, I don't know anybody that didn't experience some sort of bullying at school in some way, shape or form, or some sort of ostracism or being pushed away. You know, every night it felt like every night I was walking home for 6 months, 12 months, whatever, a group of 4 boys from another school would make me sport. They would spit on me, verbally abuse me, and physically abuse me as well on the way home from school. So I'll go the long route home from school and I would run the last 20 minutes so no one would know that I was late. So no one would ever question me as to what was going on. Now, I couldn't tell my brother because my brother was the toughest kid in school. Like, all the girls loved him, all the girls fancied my brother, and all the guys wanted to hang out with him. Yeah. My brother got expelled from school for fighting with the principal at 15. And came off the better from it. So you can imagine what this kind of like this. I had this amazing role model. I want to be just like him. He's a freaking god. I mean, shit, come on, yeah. And then my dad was a police officer, and I felt I couldn't tell him, because this is late 80s, early 90s. I felt I would be emasculated if I told them. So I never told them. I bottled it up, and I became what I became, and then turned that into bullying. A few years ago, I meet this guy from Alaska. This is strong. So I'm caveating this. He was sex trafficked by his brother when he was 9 years old. It's like, you wouldn't even want to make that shit up, let alone think about it or talk about it. But if my trauma to me was a 10 out of 10, and then I meet this guy in Alaska and he tells me this story, but his trauma's a 10 out of 10. Or mine's like a 0.2 if you're lucky, because, shit. So we don't do anything about it. We just go, well, that's how life is. And that pain that we have stays literally suppressed and depressed in the system. That part of us that didn't feel safe then becomes fragmented. And we have these inner children that are then exiled. And we have these protective mechanisms, the protective ego that steps in. It's an amazing part of your subconscious mind. But then what happens is these little exiled parts of us, they take those little parts of our personality with them as well. And they get pushed away into the shadow, and the gifts that they hold go into shadow as well. So when we're exploring that, and we call it rescuing kids, this is how I learned this a few years ago, but I've been working with psychedelics for around about 6 years on my own personal development and co-facilitating some ceremonial spaces as well, and talking shamanic practices around soul retrieval work, etc. as well. And then as I learned this modality of hypnotherapy, it was just one of those kind of, there are no coincidences, just like the language that they were talking was exactly the same language. And it was talking about the unified field and oneness and rescuing kids and all of these things. And it's just like, this is what we call it. We call it rescuing kids. Because if you saw, if there was a kid next door going through some of the things that you experienced as a child, you wouldn't fucking sit there and do nothing. Yeah. You'd go around and kick the fucking door down. And you tell them it's over, it's fucking done. You don't have to do this anymore. You'd call the police or social services or whatever, you'd step in. And at the same time, there's a small part of us that is still feeling those things in some way, shape or form, still waiting to be picked up, still waiting for someone to tell them it's over, still waiting for the hand to hold, still leaning on the front window, waiting for daddy to come home. And there's little parts of us that are doing that over and over and over again because we're saying it's not as bad as that. But it's fucking bad for you.
Yeah. And it is. It's like these parts of us are just stuck in time.
Yep.
I like to kind of even describe it as they're just reliving that hell over and over and over again in like this little bubble or cycle. But you said something that I actually want to kind of highlight it. It was so profound. You literally just said not only do these fragments or these parts of them get locked away, but also the gift that they hold goes into the shadow as well.
For safekeeping, because it wasn't safe to be that in that moment. So if you imagine, like, you're 3-4 years old and you're like, right, I want to know what orange crayon looks like on the floral wallpaper. I mean, every 3-year-old goes through this at some point, yeah? And it's just like, okay, shit, cool. I'll find the orange crayon and there's the floral wallpaper and we get creative. Like we're having a whale of a time, aren't we? And then all of a sudden, mum or dad turns up and they're like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. And it's carnage, it's chaos. There's you expressing your creative self, being 3, being amazing. Yeah. And you were just like, yeah, but the little voice in my head said we needed to explore this. I needed to push my physical boundaries. And it gets met with that moment. And this is when the trauma happens, yeah? So I'll explain it how I explain it to everyone so that everyone gets this beautiful picture of it. Imagine you're 3, 4, 5 years old, yeah? And you're in the boardroom of your head. But you're there with your, dressed in adult clothes with the sleeves hanging down, looking like one of those cute wedding card pictures, yeah? And there's mum and dad are the divine feminine, divine masculine, and they're gods. Yeah, and they have to be. Yeah, because human babies are the most useless fucking creature on the planet. It's, by the way, it's scientifically proven. I'm not just saying it just to be funny. It's scientifically proven, yeah? Yep. So if you see a cat or a dog or a buffalo or a giraffe, in 2 hours they can walk, in 2 days they can run. Human baby can't even clean its own ass for the first 4 years of its life, if you're lucky, yeah? So mum and dad have got to be gods. But then in that moment, as children, we only need 3 things. We need to feel safe, certain, and loved, and that's it. Safe with these people, certain that we're going to get our needs met, and loved for who we are. And actually, if we don't have these things up until the age of 7, we can die. So if we don't believe we feel safe, we don't believe we feel certain, we're not receiving, we can die from that psychologically and physiologically. So there in that moment when you've just drawn all over the wallpaper or whatever, and then mum turns up or dad turns up and you're expressing your creativity, you just listen to your intuition and you put it out there, and it's met with retribution. Quite literally divine retribution. These people are gods and they have just rained this down on you. It's just like, it is not safe to be me right now. I no longer feel safe with this person. I no longer feel certain. I do not feel loved. And at that point, your whole world comes collapsing down. But the human brain only wants you to do 2 things. Stay alive, make babies. That's it. Mm-hmm. It's a really simple equation, which has kept us going for about 250,000 years, okay? So, but at that point, when your whole world is collapsing down, you don't feel safe, you don't feel certain, it's just like, oh shit, I can't do this. Then this is when the ego then steps in. So your protective ego steps in and says, well, I'll take that away from you. It's like you've been given this dossier of how screwed up mum and dad are. And by the way, I'm not saying your parents are, or evil or awful people. Our parents tend to be on a spectrum. Most of them are just unconscious and unaware, and there is a sliding spectrum all the way to the other end of the scale, which is, willfully and socially abusive. And I deal with, all sorts in between those things. Most of us, our parents just are unaware of what they did and how they did it. So in that moment, we get given this dossier about your mum and dad. It's just like, if I open this dossier, my whole world is going to collapse. And the ego says, don't worry, I'll take it away. And the ego, this is amazing. And it reaches in and it takes some of the memory away with it. It takes some of the emotion and some of the heat and the pain with it. And it locks it in this room. And it says, I'm going to mark this room a 99 out of 100 for shitstorm. Yeah, if you go in here, it's going to be apocalyptic. It's going to be 4 horsemen, rivers of blood, cats liking dogs. It's going to be a mess. Yeah, and the 4-year-old version of you is like, I'm serious, bro. I'm good. Take it. It's good. You have it. Yeah. And the ego's like, cool, locks it away. But in order for you to stay away from this room, you're going to have to change the way you behave. And you're 3-4 years old, and you're like, well, truthfully, what the fuck do you know about the world at 4 years old, let alone 24 years or 44 years? They know nothing about the world. And the ego, I don't want to feel like this. What do you want me to do? And the ego's like, fantastic. Well, the first thing you're going to have to do, and I'm going to say this can often be the hardest thing for many people to hear, the first thing you're going to have to do is say it's all your fault. Because if it's not your fault, it's their fault. And if it's their fault, you won't feel safe and certain. And you don't need love to make babies. You just need to feel safe and certain. So the ego's like, cool, great. And you go, yeah, great. It's my fault. But what we don't realize is the trade-off is this, is that actually what we're saying is we're not lovable, because if we were lovable, they wouldn't have done that. So it's not safe to be that thing that you were in that moment: creative, passionate, spontaneous, humorous, joyous, curious, whatever it is that you were holding in that moment, because you were listening to the little voice in your head, having that creative moment with the orange crayon. That happened, and that was your trauma moment, and that small part of you didn't feel safe, so it was fragmented and pushed aside. And it carried that gift with it. So the curiosity, the creativity, the spontaneity goes with that little part of you, because it's not safe to be that. So the little part of it carries it with it into the shadow to keep it safe, so it doesn't get lost.
There went creativity.
Yeah. And how many people say, I'm not creative, I can't do that, I'm not this, or people are trying to find joy or whatever they're trying to look for, and they can't find it, because actually it's been locked inside of themselves because of a moment. So, when we're seeing these moments, it is speaking to that small child, speaking to that exiled part of us, and bringing it out of the shadow into the light, and giving it a place, its rightful place back in the heart of things, to welcome the small part of us back home. And home truly is where the heart feels safest. So we make that space for them when we go through these processes, and we bring them back to where they need to be, so that gift can come back online, so that we can live life based on that, not based on how we were treated. Because when we do this, we measure our worth often, we measure our value on how we were treated. We lose connection to the intuitive parts of us. We lose connection to our intuition, to our connection to our higher selves, through those moments of trauma in these lower realms of vibration, as it were. And then we spend the rest of our time trying to retune, attune, align, clear, defrag, defrag the psychological hard drive, in order to create that connection again, so that we can actually express our gifts in their totality.
Yeah. One thing I'm really hearing from you too, is that, yeah, trauma is trauma. It's the perception of the experience. So how it gets locked in, it doesn't matter. The outward thing that caused it is what it is. But it's however it was perceived in order for that fracturing to happen. It is what it is. There is no, again, like you're saying, there is no 1 to 10 scale on it. Trauma is trauma, as is how it's locked inside.
Yeah.
And therefore, as we get to find these little people again, these parts of ourselves again, this really kind of comes in, because you're saying there in a lot of ways, the gifts are locked right inside of us
Yep.
in
Yep.
these little bubbles, in these little places. And one thing, I think is the biggest hindrance to our growth is exactly what you've stated as well, which is that we just try to say, well, it was no big deal. It's just how it was. Well, it wasn't anything, wasn't nothing. So we down talk a lot of the experiences we have, which is again, devaluing or devalidating that poor child and the experience we went through again. So again, still telling ourselves you are wrong.
Yep. But
And
but in this is this is the safety mechanism, or part of the mechanisms of the protective ego, because understanding that the protective ego is doing everything it can to keep you safe, because it does not want you to feel like you did in that original moment. Because if it thinks that you will feel like that in that moment, you felt like you were going to die, that's why it's there, to keep you alive. If you go back to that moment, if you feel those feelings, it thinks that you will die, because your protective ego doesn't know that you've grown up. This is when we get to start getting to the kind of the quantum entanglement and quantum timelines of what's going on with our psyche. Yeah, is your subconscious mind still thinks you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, still in the womb, whatever it is, doesn't know you've grown up. So it's still behaving as you did in that moment, which is why in that moment, yes, it was the protective ego, but then as we get older, it then becomes the saboteur, because what holds us together as children is what pulls us apart as adults. So that when we start to see these habits and behaviors, most of the time, though, what we do is we give ourselves a hard time. We'll say, oh, for fuck's sake, I should know better. Oh, look at me, I'm 28, 38, 48, whatever. You think I know better by now. Oh, I should have said this. Oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should be in this sort of house. I should have 2 children. I should have this sort of job. Da, 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 should. And we end up shoulding all over ourselves. So we end up holding ourselves in this pattern, but actually where we're giving ourselves a hard time, what we're doing is we're actually reinforcing the protective ego's behavior. And the ego goes, well, obviously you're not ready to deal with this. So here, have some more alcohol. Here, have some more social media. Have some, have cocaine instead of, vodka, because that's obviously healthier for you, and all of these things. And it just tells you this story to hold you in that pattern in order for you not to feel like you did in that original moment. And every time that we push against it, it will turn the volume up in order to hold that pattern even more. But what your protective ego, and your protective ego is amazing. It's doing a phenomenal job. It's doing it because it loves you. It's doing, you've got these, they call it self-sabotaging, but in truth, you're not self-sabotaging. There is no such thing actually as self-sabotaging, because it's doing it because it believes it's meeting a need. It's helping you in some kind of way. It just doesn't realize the way it's helping you is actually, in the nicest possible way, fucking certain things up. Yeah. So the more that you can see this, the easier it is for you then to see your protective ego. And when you see the behavior, when you see a pattern, when you see something or whatever come up, you can go, oh, thank you. When your inner critic, speaks up or pipes up or starts giving you a hard time, you literally just stop in that moment and go, thank both you. And your inner critic will go, it will get really confused. It's like, hold on a minute, that's not normal. You don't normally say thank you. Normally you cry and give yourself a hard time and beat yourself up about this. And this is how our relationship works. So when you hear the inner critic and then you turn around and say, thank you very much, I really appreciate your support right now. And the inner critic gets really confused. And then you ask it a question, because most of us, when we hear the inner critic, will go, that's true, that's obvious, that's what I've experienced all the way through my life. Because what happens is when we kind of look at these timelines, is we have the originating moment. The protective ego will encourage you to get into a similar relationship with a similar kind of person without you kind of realizing it. So you give yourself a hard time again for doing it again, so that it can compound its position in your life, so it can stay in control, because you're not safe to look after yourself. And what we end up doing is walking backwards in a circle with our eyes closed, wondering why we keep ending up in the same place. You know, we end up in the same relationship with a different person. Because as you were saying, what we're doing is actually, what's actually happening is we are reacting the past moment in the present, which is stopping us from creating the future, which is why it's called reacting. Most people don't realize it. I only realized this about 6 months, like reacting. Holy shit fire. It's like literally we are reacting that original moment. We are just playing it out again with a different character, with a different person playing the same character, same relationship. Because that original moment when that thing happened, it took our response, you know, our ability to respond away, our responsibility. So as we start to see that, we then take back that ability to respond in that moment, and then we can make a shift and step forward without giving ourselves a hard time and keeping ourselves stuck in that loop.
So powerful. Yeah, I definitely have some similar ways. You know, the guides have given me a term a while back to refer to that aspect that is protecting us as the guard dog. That it's just doing what it's designed and it's created to do. That its only job really is, like you were saying, to keep the body alive for procreation, the perpetuation of our species, to
Yep.
keep it going. And so it is this profound thing when you can just say to it, thank you for getting me this far. You did a great job. Here I am. I made it. I'm going to handle it from here. Let me now help that find a new way of being. And so, you know, a lot of this work that you've been doing with the plant medicine, I'm so curious how you've integrated it in, because I love how you naturally got drawn to hypnotherapy. I also was very guided to start to integrate hypnotherapy work, to really work with the deep subconscious, because otherwise it just felt like everything was just being dealt with in the surface level. And the ability to really kind of get in there to the aspect, to me, hypnotherapy is a place to start to integrate, to have that connection with the communication to our higher mind, to our soul, to starting to actually pay attention to some of what feels uncomfortable, so that we can start to go like, well, what is it that I do want in my life? And there's something you said very profoundly, even with using plant medicine, that many times people do go to plant medicine as a way to like fix me, you know, bring up all of my shadows so that all of a sudden it just comes out and now all of a sudden I'm great. And you've brought up something before in another conversation with someone that was saying, you know, what if you could go into these journeys with what you do want to focus on?
Yeah. And because, you know, when we look at the shadow work, it's like really there is enough shadow in this lifetime to roll around in for an eternity. You know, individually, ancestrally, past life, collectively. If we all want to have a shadow party, we could do it for several lifetimes and we would still not get any further in this problem, in this situation, would we? You know, we've got enough of our own shit to sort out individually, let alone about all the other people out there. But when you're looking at this, it's like, where do I want to be? What do I actually want to feel? What am I focusing on? So when we do this, one of my teachers said to me, "Is you just focus on freedom. You just focus on freedom, so that when you're in the process, wherever it is you want to go, and you know, depending on people's experiences here, there are certain plant medicines. You know, it's not. I'm not advocating the use of it, and it's not for everyone. They are big experiences in some cases. And it can be quite a lot to take on board, you know, but it's having that wherewithal and that focus is like, I know where I'm getting to. Okay, I'm just going to hold the line. I'm just going to hold the course, because this storm is immense, and I know where I'm going to. And then as you're aiming towards freedom, as you're flying towards freedom, as you're lifting off, that shackle that is around your ankle is holding you tight. You will see the chain, and the chain will go tight, and you cannot cut a slack chain. And then you can release yourself, and then you can move into that thing that you need to move into. You know, it's when we're doing this work, and especially with the hypnotherapy side of it, and partly the reason I did it is, one, I was a very manipulative teenager. I could get my way quite easily. in certain situations. Don't get me wrong, it probably wasn't healthy. I had a really good understanding of human behavior, etc., as a teenager. And then I got into coaching after my struggles with leadership and my managers, etc. I wanted to find and learn processes where I could help others in ways that I was never helped. And I wanted to do that. And then I started to find that people were working with me and they were getting to a point where I could not take them safely beyond that point, even though I could see what was happening. You know, eating disorders, weight, really morbidly obese, behavioral patterns, etc. All of these things. It was like, okay, cool. I can do some cool coaching here, but actually psychologically, can I hold you in this container safely and okayly? No, I can't. Okay, this is beyond my remit. And that's kind of where the hypnotherapy really clicked in for me. I'd already been exploring the psychedelics. My original plan with the psychedelics was I was going to learn this for productivity, and I was going to learn it for innovation, and I was going to kind of guide leaders to use coaching and psychedelics and come up with crazy new ideas and create all this technology and these wonderful things. And then as soon as I went into the psychedelics, I was just like, oh my God, there's all this shit that I haven't sorted out for myself before I even go anywhere. And then all my trauma came to the surface, and I was like, okay, maybe these psychedelics aren't quite what I thought they were going to be. And then all my stuff started coming to the surface, started processing it. But I was processing it because I had the skills in NLP, because I had the skills in coaching, and I had the capacity to do that. And I was already able to kind of sit in that space and work on it really quickly. And then using high dosages of psilocybin mushrooms and etc., and really pushing that to a whole new level of experience. I was like, okay, cool, I get this. Innovation, productivity, okay, that's nice, but crikey, there's going to be all these leaders that are going to come into this space and they're going to have a serious problem. So we started looking at that, and then I went and sat ayahuasca and Bufo for the first time. Yeah, about that. Bufo is an entheogen. It's the most powerful psychedelic on the planet. For those people that don't know, it comes from the toad Bufo alvarius, which is the Sonoran Desert toad or Colorado River toad. No, you don't lick the toad. That's a myth. You'll just make yourself really sick if you go licking toads. Yeah. Mike Tyson's a big proponent for this, and there's a few other people about this. But what happens when you smoke Bufo alvarius, you smoke the venom, they dry it out in the crystal, and then you smoke it at a very high temperature. Within 10 to 15 seconds, the whole fabric of the universe comes apart in front of your eyes, and you're literally blasted out to the other side of the cosmos. Gone. It's fucking heavy, and it's not for everybody. Yeah. I went into collective rage. This was the first time I'd done it, by the way. So this was a few years ago. I went into collective rage. We were in a group experience. There was 5 of us doing it. I lost the plot. I went full, like I say, full rage, like literally full embodiment of human spiritual rage. The woman next to me that was supposed to be going next, she went, you know what? I'm good. Thanks very much. I'm out, because I'd lost the plot. There was another guy saw me go. He's got PTSD from Afghanistan. He goes, well, fucking hell, if Nathan's losing it, I'm going to fucking lose it as well. So he's like, he gets out, he loses the plot. So he's screaming and rage. And there's another guy over here with a similar size to me. I'm 6'6". He's 6'6" and wider than me. He loses the plot. So there's 4 fully grown men fully raging. Yeah, just unreal. And at that point, I then started to try and punch my way through the floor until they got a cushion and almost broke my hand trying to go through the floor. So this is kind of, and there's a reason I'm saying this, and you'll see the reason in a moment. So I had this experience, and then all of a sudden I had that breakthrough experience. And when they talk about a breakthrough experience, is you go into the source, you go into source, you become one with the universe and one with divinity. There is the light. There is only the light. You are the light. The light is love, and there is no boundary to it, and that is it. And you come back to source completely and utterly. It's like a factory reset. You literally, boom, okay, actually, shit, this is what it's all about. Now I remember, we spent this whole time in this human existence having this stupid shit done to us and doing that to other people and making a mess of things and upsetting people and dealing with world poverty and all of this stuff that's going on. It's just like, oh yeah, actually, this is what the truth of it all. So I had this feeling, and then this piece of geometry came in. And I didn't understand at the time what the geometry was, but the geometry has stayed with me ever since. And it was the triangle. It's part of the Merkaba diamond star, and it is the triangle with the three circles on each point and a circle gathering them together. I was like, okay, I don't understand what this is. So there I am in the white light, and there's this gold piece of geometry just floating in front of me while I'm in this kind of psychedelic experience. And I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. We'll hold on to that one. And then, you know, as I came out of it and I spoke to a psychic afterwards who works with light language, etc. And she went, yeah, you were off fighting some galactic battle, which then kind of lined up with some of the stuff that Becca and I spoke about 2 years after the event. You were doing this and you were actually there, and there was this huge war, and you couldn't have been conscious for that because it was too much for you to process. It was too much information, but actually that's what you were processing at that point in time. That's where the rage was coming from. And then, you know, so I'm kind of all these different components clicking together, and this piece of geometry, which I now understand is actually the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious. And how they link. So yes, they are the 3 points. And yes, you can do this work from either one of those points, but it will be slow. You can do it all from your conscious mind, but it will be, oh, how do I speak to people? How, you know, it's like psychotherapy. That's really cerebral, long work, strategies, frameworks, ideas. And we want to go into the subconscious mind to really rewire and shift some of those things. Now, if we do it all from the subconscious, that's also really handy. But when you then come out of the subconscious from a hypnotherapy session and you don't know how to deal with the people that you've been dealing with, you need the conscious tools and frameworks to kind of shift how you're speaking and interacting with people. But then as you go into the subconscious and you clear that trauma, that pattern, that behavior that's disconnected us from our intuition, from our higher selves, from our higher purpose, as we clear that, it enables us to then connect with our superconscious, which enables us to bring our gifts back online. So I was like, oh, this makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to do it from the cerebral the whole time. And now I understand what the superconscious looks like with ayahuasca and Bufo and so on and so forth. It's like one feeds the other. But it's, you know, it's that trauma that we experience, you know, when we're small, that switches off that connection, that holds us in this lower level of density. We lose the connection to our intuition, to our inner voice. It's actually the first thing that we disconnect from. In the trauma moment, the first thing we disconnect from is our inner voice, our intuition, because the intuition told me to draw on the wallpaper. Yeah, the intuition told me to do this, to pull the cat's tail, to see what happened. And then when I listen to that voice, it gets me in trouble. So it's not safe to listen to myself. And this is why, you know, we end up not trusting ourselves. This is why we have autoimmune disorders, which are so rife right now. Because actually an autoimmune disorder is the fact that we don't trust ourselves. We don't feel safe in our own skin. So our immune system starts to attack us from the inside out. So as we can rehabilitate and reconcile those moments and let the inner child know that they're safe to come home and they can come back in, we listen to that and bring those gifts in. It helps us to shift the subconscious, which is running the patterns and the programs, which then enables us to connect more deeply to our superconscious, to our star-seeded selves and our galactic kind of connections. But we can't do one. I find that if we go too far one or the other, it's like, you know, if we're too rigid and too earthbound and too corporate and too hierarchical, we're like an oak tree in the wind, and the wind blows and we snap. But if we, in the nicest possible way, we go too spiritual woo-woo, and, you know, the other way, we become like a piece of tissue paper blowing in the breeze. And yeah, we'll still end up at the same place. But actually, you know, if we combine these things and bring these elements together and click them together as the key components, as a complete puzzle, actually we'll move through that space and those phases far, far quicker.
And it's amazing that a lot of that information came through as light language for you, because in so many ways, you know, we have this understanding, this draw towards light language, that as we're changing the subconscious patterns within ourselves, we are literally changing the sentences that are being written through the language of our DNA, of our light codes, of how we perceive things, because it's truly whatever's held within our body, you know, whatever might be stuck or bound in these shadow times that now are just restricted in there. So therefore it's like that story, like you're saying, It's just the retelling of the story over and over and over again. And we go in there in order to change the ending, like those books where you can rewrite, change, pick a new ending, pick a new way of writing it. How do you want to write it now? And I thank you so much for just the transparency and sharing that story, because, you know, I think there's a lot of people drawn to working with psychedelics, working with DMT inducing substances in order to find the quick way to spirituality. And I find myself very much in this place of like, you need to be cautious. You really need to know how you're doing something. You need to know how you're working with something, because it's not just something that's going to be this magical thing that's going to open up all of your spirituality. It's going to bring your shit forward.
100%.
You don't have the tools, and if you aren't mature enough to have been already working on that or know how to process it, you can schism yourself.
Yep.
So
Horrendously.
yeah.
But this is so there's a couple of things I really want to kind of emphasize on that. One of them, they talk about integration after a psychedelic experience. And actually, one of the best integration techniques you can do is just good preparation. And for me, it doesn't matter if you're doing a silent retreat, a dark retreat, a psychedelic retreat, a meditation retreat, a yoga retreat, is what are you going there for? What is your intention for 3 days of deep fascia release yoga, for 2 weeks in darkness? And that's the thing, by the way. I mean, I want to do a dark retreat, but crikey, it still terrifies me thinking about it right now. But what do you want to get out? Yeah, I mean, crikey, there it is. That for me is like, that's next level. I mean, I talk about smoking toad venom and people are like, that's crazy. And I'm like, going in a dark room for 2 weeks. No, man, that's crazy to me, you know. But it's the preparation. It's like, well, what do I want to get out of that? And actually, you will find by asking those core coaching questions, like, what am I going for? What is my intention? Where is it I'm heading? Okay, just asking those questions on a daily basis for 30 days will radically transform you. But they don't. People go into it as like, well, I'm going to go and drink ayahuasca for 3 nights and that's going to solve my problems. Now, there are kind of these key phrases that many people hear is like, you will get what you need, not what you want. Sometimes I think that's a little bit of a get out clause for some people. It's like, oh, here's a load of shit, deal with it. Oh, you get what you need, not what you want, fucker. You know, which is not helpful. But then the other part of it is really understanding that the universe will not give you more than you can handle. But if we don't know that, if we don't have that understanding, and then suddenly the universe applies that, and maybe we don't have the tools in order to process or handle that thing, even though the universe knows that we're capable of doing it, we can end up with a serious problem. You know, I've heard stories that have gone and drunk, people who've gone and drunk ayahuasca, and then they've just suddenly found out they were abused by both their grandfathers. And they're like, they're in an ayahuasca experience, and they're like, oh my God, like, what do I do with this piece of information? And the shaman can't even speak English. And the shaman's not a psychotherapist. And now you've got this piece of information, you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do this? You know, I'm now, like you say, a schism. Now I'm more traumatized than I was when I drank this thing. And I thought this thing was supposed to be helping me. Like, fuck this. Yeah. So it is like being really like, it is not a panacea. It is not a silver bullet. It is a lens. And ayahuasca, mushrooms, and all of those things, they will tell you when you speak to that consciousness, they are a lens. What you do with it is up to you. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. What you do with it and how you process that and how you move that is the important part. So no, it's not for everybody, and everyone has their route to explore this. But it's really important that people understand that they will get what they need. They can also handle what they're getting, because they wouldn't have said yes if they couldn't. And also having the right support here and here and here in order to, you know, facilitate the processing of that information when it comes at you.
And what I love too is I think there's a term like, what is it, psychonaut, or someone who goes on the journeys like an astronaut, but is able
inward
to explore and know the terrain and bring it back. And one of the things that I really love is, you know, yes, there are plant medicines, toads, different ways. We also naturally make DMT within our body. We naturally make it primarily within our lungs. It also is created within our stomach. It's a natural thing that's in almost every plant and every animal. So it is something we are meant to learn to work with. So breath work alone, this is why it's such a transformational process doing breath work, because you are increasing the circulation and amplifying the amount of DMT that you're pressing into your pineal gland through the rhythms of your breath. And so within this, one of the things that I just want to even just kind of segue into your book, because this is one of the most profound things I saw with this, is that you've taken the opportunity of the connection to the spirit animals, the connection to the earth, the connection to the journey, the connection to what we would receive through a plant medicine journey, but created it in such a way that we can do it through hypnosis, through breath work, through our own energy. And what I'm gathering from you, I'd love to just hear from you. It sounds like people are having even purging experiences of detoxing stuff out of their body, not even utilizing the actual plant. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. And I've had it more with my one-to-one clients and something smaller elements with the visceral responses in the group work through Zoom, where I'm working with people that have used ayahuasca and have used plant medicines, etc., without ayahuasca, and I'll be doing inner child work with them. The memory will come up and then they start vomiting. You know, in this time and age, we are purging at such a rapid rate. And don't get me wrong, just you don't have to vomit to purge, by the way. I've had this clarified a couple of times. Like yawning is purging, burping is purging, farting, whatever, all of those things count. Everyone's like, well, fuck, I don't want to go and do ayahuasca. I don't want to spend, why would I pay someone $400 to sit up for 8 hours and puke? I could do that by myself, you know? But yeah, we're having these experiences because collectively we are shifting that stuff. And those people that have worked with, you know, different kind of DMT experiences, whether it's through their breath work, whether it's through plant, whether it's through whatever, actually there's that part of their brain which is already kind of tuned into that, and they can just pick up and they go, actually, I need to shift this thing. And so this kind of feeds into a couple of angles of the story. One is I am very earthbound in a positive way. I've really got a foot in the camp. I've really got a foot in this kind of earth plane kind of terrain, you know, with the way that I see psychotherapy and the way I interact with my Saturn Capricorn kind of energies. Yeah. Sneezing is definitely purging as well.
Yeah.
Definitely. But you know, I've got a foot in this camp. I have always found it, though, difficult to meditate. And I don't know if it's because of ADHD tendencies or, you know, in the nicest possible way, you go and do a meditation and someone says to you, right, close your eyes, take a breath. And right now, when you're tiptoeing through the daffodils, and here is your power penguin, yeah, and all of these things. And I'm like, no, I'm still having an argument with my first girlfriend when I was 13 years old. I'm still doing my accounts. I am nowhere near the fucking daffodils right now, okay? So this is where hypnotherapy for me really kicked in, because yeah, don't get me wrong, some people are getting it, I'm not, you know, and I think so many practitioners are missing the beat without using the hypnotic language patterns, because there's such a deep place we can go to when we circumvent the brain chatter. Because I've always struggled with it. So when I learned this hypnotherapy, it's like, right, I've been doing psychedelics for 7 years now. This is interesting. And then we learn how to do the hypnotherapy and we go rescuing kids and, you know, creating these experiences and bringing home these exiled parts of our subconscious. Okay, cool. What the fuck else could we do with this? You know, so my teacher has got these amazing journeys. He's when he taught us, and the third pillar for him, which is really about transcendence, trans-ending, is really about connecting us to source, to going into the oneness of the universe through a hypnotic process. Unreal, you know, and the journeys I've done with people, literally, they were like, you know, you can see it in the nice, but they're having full, you know, spiritual releases, energetic releases, that they're convulsing with it as they're disappearing out into the universe, etc. Very powerful experiences. And like, oh, fucking hell, like this is with hypnosis. I mean, what the fuck is going on here? Partly with my energy connection with plant medicines and these consciousnesses, partly with the hypnotherapy and my releasing of my own trauma and kind of bringing these together. So I've been exploring this over the last couple of years with new moon journeys, tuning into the energies, creating these processes, connecting with things. And then over the last 15 months, where are we now? April, yeah, about 15 months now, beginning of last year, something shifted, something else clicked in. And those monthly journeys just went up a whole new notch of power and influence and essence. It's just like, I'm going to create these new journeys. We're going to create some serious mindscapes here. We're going to have some serious play here. And it was like, well, how do I actually bring online the way that I experience the world, or how I'm seeing the world when I'm using certain plant medicines and certain pieces of information? And how can I create that as a process so that other people can experience it in their own inner world as well? So when we did, and this kind of leads into the book a little bit, when Becca and I did the original Starseed Origins star chart, and we was exploring this, Becca was like, wow, yeah, and I was on the spaceship and I could see these people and saw these. Oh, by the way, I met one of the mantises, mantoid beings, earlier this week. He or it popped into one of my medicine journeys. It's like, oh, hello, cool. And Becca was explaining, oh, and there's this pillar, there's this crystalline pillar which holds the information, which kind of is like the navigation system or the memory system for this spaceship. And this is here and da 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 da. And I was like, okay, cool. And I'm just like, well, what do I do with that information? It's like, I'm here on Earth, kind of, watching Pinky and the Brain, and what am I supposed to do with this crystalline thing or whatever? It's just like, okay, cool. So I just tune in it. So when I'm using my meditation and my medicine mornings, I'm tuning into this feeling, and I could see this crystalline core inside my body. And my hands then became two of the points of the triangle, and the third point of the triangle became my heart inside the crystalline core inside my body. And I was just like, far out, fuck. And I use rapé, which is tobacco snuff, Amazonian tobacco snuff. And I use that for grounding and centering myself. So I have this experience, and I'm experiencing the world through this, and I'm purging and clearing and cleansing and connecting and getting this information. I'm like, okay, cool. How do I then turn that into a hypnotic journey? So actually I can get everybody to experience their crystalline core, to decalcify that which is cluttering and stopping that energy flow, to get them to feel that energy in their hands, to connect back to their heart, to connect to the galactic source of wherever they are, to understand whatever that crystal is. I don't tell people it's this crystal. It's, as that energy comes down, it clears that crystalline core. What crystal's in there? And for some people, it was rose quartz. For some people, it was adventurine. And, whatever it is, it's like, okay, what's resonant for you? Yeah. And, people are tuning into this, and people are, having those spiritual releases, those energetic releases. And, each month over these 15 months, it's like, actually, I'm creating these deeper, more profound processes, because we're going into the subconscious and connecting to the superconscious. We're circumnavigating or circumventing the trauma that's holding us in these patterns, so that we can access our innate wisdom, our innate power, and get that clarity and energetically, like, in a really strong way. And so these conversations have shifted. And then what happens, I start learning these, the sacred chants of the Huni Quinn from the Amazons. So we had an opportunity to start learning some of the sacred songs from the ayahuasca ceremonies, which you only learn from the pages, the spiritual elders of the tribes. And then they're now making use of Zoom and teaching people around the world on Zoom, rather than just waiting. Well, rather than you having to go to the Amazon basin, and travel however many days to go and live in the jungle. Now you can do it over Zoom. It's amazing. So I had this idea. It's just like, well, I could write these journeys to connect people with these spirit animals inside their subconscious mind. And eventually what will happen is I will start using the Huni Quinn chants inside of these processes. So I will lead a journey with hypnosis to take you in to meet, say, the spirit of the boa constrictor, and then I will use the traditional songs inside of the hypnosis to connect you with that energy more deeply. Because in the hypnosis we use music as metaphor. We use music to create a sound bed under what we do. And we'll say things like, let this song be the love letter you wish you'd written your younger self. And, you press play for 4.5 minutes and you watch people absolutely melt. It's just this beautiful thing. So this is connection with these journeys. So the plan was to write 4 journeys: the boa constrictor, the jaguar, the hummingbird, and the eagle. That was it. Yeah, 32 journeys later. So in this, I then started writing these journeys, and because I'm like, well, what are the gifts that are coming up? And I've been testing these experiences and testing the journeys out, and they have been having really profound effects on people, and embedding these gifts and in reactivating things like courage and self-appreciation and joy and connection to source and hearing the voices of the gods and all of these things inside of these journeys. So these hypnotic, these kind of experiences then became like a script, like a guide, that if you were a shamanic practitioner, a hypnotherapist, a yoga, like leading yoga nidra, whatever, you could use these and just take people into relaxation, however you do it, and then just read this and enjoy what comes up for people. Yeah. Or you could read it as a self-coaching book, because there's questions in there as you read the stories. It's like a Aesop's fable on steroids. You know, like you could read the question in there, and then in that you can then journal the answers out and explore what comes up for you. So it's just like this unfolding. And you know, as I started writing these at the beginning of the year, I can't remember, I think it was 4 weeks later, is then when I had that kind of COVID entity presence all at the same time. It was like, and you said, it's like, I think you're really onto something here, because there's this thing that's stopping you from doing it. It's just like, oh my God. And I was really in deep kind of expressing and creating these processes to create a platform to people to access this stuff and share this wisdom at a deeper level to help heal more people, including themselves and other people. So I ended up getting knocked out for 2 weeks with an entity attachment via one of my clients.
Yeah, you got
So
hit pretty hard, and you know, as you're talking, I'm sitting here going like, oh my gosh, you're exactly describing, you've created a new doorway through the liminal spaces, how to pull people through, because you know, you can describe it through maybe plant medicine journeys, but you know, any kind of meditation where one starts to have that experience of going into the 0 point field or going into the all, we get the distinct remembrance within ourselves that the physical form is truly just one of the expressions, but it's not the totality, and that we are connected through our consciousness, that it doesn't matter if you're have one body here on earth and another, you know, aspect of consciousness in the Pleiades. If you can mesh within, beyond this liminal state, you can merge within the consciousness. And so therefore, I'm hearing you say that you're finding a way to travel people to the Amazon.
Yeah.
Through the back door of our consciousness, so that we can go on trips without having to fly on an airplane.
Yeah, exactly this, you know, and it's a great kind of, the way that I speak to people about that is like, it doesn't matter if you've got past life, ancestral, split soul, whatever's going on. What we actually have is we have this frame of reference right here in this now. You know, whatever happened to us, you know, whatever happened to Great Aunt Beryl in 1752, you know, when they got attacked by a vampiric hedgehog or something or whatever, great, that's cool. That's your ancestral line and some of your karmic stuff. But we have this little frame of reference here. And then what we clear here clears that for them, you know, and in all kind of planes, dimensions and fields of time, etc. But it's the same as this. It's just like, well, actually, can I go to the Amazons? Can I do this? Well, actually, we can create a little frame of reference here, and then we can just sneak in the back door here, and we can create a new experience that enables you to have that experience right here, or inspires a new possibility somewhere else. You know, and using, for me, when I use these psychedelic experiences, you know, part of the journey when the hummingbird shows up in the hummingbird journey. Could you imagine, like, you know, you imagine the colors of a hummingbird, now that iridescent, the greens and the pinks and the golds and the reds, and it's just fucking delicious. And the sound of their wings as they buzz past you, that thrum of the wings. Yeah. And when that little hummingbird lands on your finger, and then the skin on your body changes to the color of a hummingbird, and you literally just become iridescent like a hummingbird. It's just like, oh my fucking God. It's just like, you know, it's creating that, because hypnotherapy is a psychedelic. And the reason I say this is because psychedelic means mind manifesting. What we're doing is we're using the subconscious mind the same way the psychedelics do to access this altered state of perception. Aldous Huxley wrote, I think in 1930 something or other, he called it the reducing valve. The human brain has a reducing valve because there's only so many bits of information we can process. You know, and over generations, actually, you're starting to see, if you go back and do the research, you can start to see that this reducing valve is actually has been expanding for millennia, getting bigger and bigger, so that we can process more consciousness. But when we go into hypnosis, it's the same as a psychedelic. We can just unscrew the reduction valve. We can let a bit more information in. We can let our brain come out to play a bit more. We can go out and just experience a bit more. We can have those sensations. We can reprogram them and release them.
It's a
You know, so we can have, so we
metaphor.
can just kind of sneak in, like you say, through the back door and just have a bit of a, you know, a bit of a party with our own DMT, with our own subconscious mind.
So incredible. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could just go on and on and on and on and on. Because this is just my wheelhouse. I just have so much fun here with this whole concept of, yeah, how do we transcend all the limitations of where our consciousness keeps us boxed in these little realities that most of them aren't even realities, that we're the ones that made them up. The realities that we inherited from our life growing up, our parents, our schools, our churches, our government, so on and so forth. And so really having that valve release is such a perfect metaphor, because it's truly, what can you imagine? This is why we're considered such divine creator beings within creation, because our imagination is what creates. And I just having an absolute experience of feeling myself as a hummingbird as you were talking that. I've never been a hummingbird before, so
But you are the hummingbird, and the hummingbird is you, and all of these wonderful things that we do. And it's just like, we have access to that through kind of the consciousness of spirit or whatever. And it's just like, actually, we can feel that if we take a moment to breathe, if we take a moment to pause and just kind of put ourselves quite literally in the shoes of the hummingbird and be that.
So if somebody wanted to work with you, if they wanted to find out more about your books that you have available, and these guided journeys and meditations that you're doing, how can people connect with you, and what sorts of things could they potentially say, hey, I would like some help with this, or this is what I would like to expand on? What are some neat ways to maybe work with you through this journey?
Yeah, so the best way is normally on Facebook. If you look for Deeper Healing and Beyond, you will find me on Facebook or Instagram. Primarily I'm in Facebook, but you can email me. If people aren't on Facebook, message me through Telegram and have a conversation. The key things that I'm in group dynamics, I don't do inner child work in group dynamics because it's just too personal, it's too deep, and there's a lot of stuff in there that there's ways and means to unpack that. Primarily, though, when people come and work with me, they're looking at new moon journeys. So I do these once a month for the new moon journeys. I just tune into what's going on energetically, create a process where we can tap into our energies, we can release, and we can open up and receive and sow those seeds of our intentions for the new moon. And then start exploring that. Last night I did an abundance reprogramming. So I did a 4-hour deep dive. So I do one of those every quarter as well. Going into people's subconscious in a group and just rewiring people's consciousness and thinking about certain things and getting them to experience the world in a different way inside of their subconscious mind, so they can show up in a different way. So there's always something going on in my world in Deeper Healing and Beyond. We've got trainings coming up where we're teaching people hypnotic language patterns as well. So if people are leading meditations, that's also coming up. Yeah. And then obviously there's the one-to-one work. If people want to have a conversation, if you feel like there's an addictive behavior, a pattern, there's something that you kind of keep coming up against, that you keep rubbing up against, and you want to have a conversation about that, have a conversation with me. First conversation's always free. Look, I want to find out what's going on for you, and I want to see what's going on. If I can give you some wisdom that will help you move in an hour and a half, then do it. If you wish to work with me after that, then we can have that conversation, but there's zero expectation of that. My thing, that thing about me being too much, I'm quite direct with how I work and how I think, and sometimes that is a bit too much for people. So even as I've been writing the last journey, has been like, actually, am I a bit too much for people? Actually, yeah, I am. Oh, okay, cool. And using the last journey that I wrote for book 4, which kind of is ready, almost ready now. Feeling into that thing. So yeah, like there's a certain level of intensity that comes with my conversations. But if you've got something that you want to open up or you want to explore, just message me and see what comes forward.
Perfect. So someone could connect with you specifically maybe for some of these shamanic journeys or some of these guided ways where you can be able to help monitor them in case something is coming up as whatever is purging or clearing or detoxing out. And so even if there isn't something particular that someone's maybe having challenges with, that maybe this is just a sacred journey also that someone wants to go through, would that also work?
Yep. So one of the things actually, most of the time when I'm working one-to-one with people, it's inner child stuff. There's something coming up. There's a pattern playing out. There's a frustration and irritation. It tends to be where I go with people. But at the same time, when I'm looking at these shamanic processes, now that this new entity forming with these shamanic processes, it's like, hold on a minute, there's an oracle deck coming, there's a series of guided meditations and recordings coming with it. There is also potentially the shamanic journey where we go for 4, 8, 12 weeks journeying with each of these animals over a set course of time as well. That's something else that's evolving. It's just like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was going to be quite like this, but it really is. So at the same time, when we do things like the new moon journeys, and in my own groups as well, that's when we do more of these shamanic processes, because it's a freer, open space, and you can just explore what you want, and also have the support of me and the group as well, with whatever bubbles to the surface in those moments as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will be putting the link to your Facebook as
thank you.
well as your website. Is your website another way that people can reach you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. NathanSimmonsCoaching.com.
Perfect.
It looks a little bit corporate. I definitely need a rebrand to go with some of the kind of slightly more weird stuff that I do, that we do. So yeah, I definitely need a rebrand to bring that online. But yes, go to NathanSimmonsCoaching.com.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. I do have someone asking this is just kind of my thoughts, because I know your volume 1 has just come out.
Yep.
On Amazon. So, you were saying something about the official launch happening. Is it this month?
Oh, I've been trying to kind of play in the nicest possible way, trying to play the social media game with Amazon as well, and trying to get as many people to download a copy of book 1 all at the same time, but trying to master Kindle and self-publishing all at the same time, whilst trying to be a father and a husband and at work. And it's just like, okay, cool. So book 1 has kind of gone there or thereabouts. There's been some valuable lessons. Book 2 is being proofread at the moment, and the journeys have already been written for that. So there's another 8 journeys in book 2 with some slight tweaks. Each book, the beginning of the intro of it and stuff, has a slight tweak, has a slight adjustment. So as you get to kind of book 4, we're starting to talk medicine wheel work as well, and how to incorporate these journeys into medicine wheel work, but how to use these tools to self-coach, etc. So book 2 is being proofread at the moment. My hope is that will be out in the next 4 weeks. So we'll have a book 2 out in 4 weeks' time. Book 3 is almost finished. The journeys are written, but I'm just writing the beginning part of that. So then as book 2 comes out, book 3 will be proofread. Book 4 is ready to go. Book 5, the framework is there. So my plan is to release at least, the ideal is a book every month for the whole of this year. That's the plan. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm definitely gonna suggest for us to go on to Kindle, Amazon to find it. If there is any challenges with it being released in the UK, he was saying that we could just log in again. Usually it'll pop back through. I think it's just because it's just newly released. So we can just be patient, give it some time, that we will get it downloaded. And as a group, I would actually love to even go through some of these journeys together. I think that would be super incredible.
I would be really happy to lead a journey of in this group with one of those journeys, whatever. We're just doing, we can get together. I don't necessarily want to preface what journey it will be, but we'll just trust the energy and we'll grab the journey out of that and we'll go on the journey and see what comes forward.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I accept. I would be so honored. We'll talk about that, and we'll set a time for that. There's so much incredible auspicious alignments in the celestials right now. So I know we'll find just the perfect time to do that. Is there anybody that had any last thoughts or words or questions for Nathan today? I know we've been kind of typing them as we go along. Whew. That was just an amazing download of information. Just a whole huge thank you so much. From all of us, so much love. Thank you so much. We are going to continue this journey together. I just wanted to celebrate and honor all of the energy, all of the work, all of the tenacity that you've put through to, even when there was energies trying to stop you from doing this, because of how powerful this is. You are creating a tool for individuals that don't have to go outside, even their home. They don't even have to ingest anything within their body if they don't choose to, and still have the benefits to truly and completely reconnect to themselves, to find those gifts within their inner child that have been locked away, so that we can all be shining as the radiance of who we are. So thank you so much, Nathan.
Thank you very much. And one last thing, I just saw someone mention the sea turtle journey come up.
Oh,
If you have done a journey, if there is a recording of that journey, send me a message. Look, and I'm going to be really mercenary here. Give me a 5-star review on Amazon and I'll send you a free journey, all right?
you got it. In fact, let's all give Nathan 5 stars. Hun, thank you so much for everything that you are doing. So much love.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Have such a beautiful rest of your day. So much love. Thank you.